The outline of what we're doing this year is Yitzchak's life. We're going to take a look at Yitzchak's life. Now, what do we know about Yitzchak? Most of us know a lot more about Avram and Yaakov than Yitzchak, right? There's more stories about them, it seems. We have Yitzchak and the Akedah, but that's more considered a test of Avram. And in this week's parsha, at the beginning of the parsha, like in last week's parsha, we had Avram burying Sarah, and then we had Eliezer going to get Rivka's wife. So Yitzchak going to get Yitzchak's wife, Rivka. Yitzchak didn't do much, right? In this week's parsha, what's the Shaklavatari of this week's parsha? We have Yaakov and Esav being born. That's the opening, right? The whole pot of beans thing.
And there's Yitzchak's travels.
Hold on. Then we have Yitzchak running around Israel, digging wells and stuff. Okay? Then after that, we have Yaakov stealing the brachas from Esav. From that point forward in the Chumash, it's all Yaakov, and then Yaakov and his sons, Yosef, etc., etc., etc. So we're done with Yitzchak after this parsha. And in this parsha, we have the story of Yaakov and Esav fighting over the brachas, which Yitzchak is really sort of a pawn in the story. Right? He's not really, he's more being acted upon than acting in the story. And we have the first story of Yaakov and Esav being born, where Yitzchak, davens to Hashem, but he doesn't really do much. The main stories we have, and in the previous parshas, we had someone else finding his wife, and him being bound on the altar at the Akedah. So Yitzchak has not been very active. Everyone follow the pattern here? Now, in Yitzchak's life itself, we have this confusing section of Chumash that we're going to read now, which is all that we have, basically, of Yitzchak being active in life. And this is ironic, because Yitzchak has a longer life than than the other two Avot. He lives longer than them. He lives the longest of the three Avot. Okay? Yeah.
Doesn't he mention that Yitzchak comes down to Egypt with them, later on? What?
Yaakov goes down to Egypt. Yitzchak dies in Israel. Yitzchak never leaves Israel.
Yitzchak is about to, and Hashem tells him not to.
We'll see that. So now, what we're going to do, here's the format of the shir. Okay, and this is where Dovi Mashnik laughs. The format of the shir is, there's going to be a very boring beginning to the shir, and it's going to go on for a while. And that boring beginning of the shir is, we are going to read through pasuk by pasuk this entire section about Yitzchak's life. Okay?
That's boring.
I'll tell you why it's boring. It's boring because it's confusing, and it's just a bunch of details that seem unconnected to each other at times. And I'm not going to be giving much explanation. I'm just going to be reading and translating. But please bear with it, because it's very necessary for us to appreciate what's coming next. So if you sort of space out during that section, you're not going to appreciate the interesting stuff later on. Does everyone understand what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Please follow along during that section. It is not the most interesting thing in the world. Okay, now, part of the reason that, if I asked you the story about Yaakov and Esav, Yaakov stealing the brachas, most of you know the details of that story very well. You know about the fur on his neck and his arms, and you know about the story of Yaakov selling of Esav selling the birthright. You guys, there's certain stories in Tanakh we know well. We can picture them. Can anyone sitting around this table picture all the stories about Yitzchak traveling around Israel and digging wells and all that stuff? These are not stories. Could you tell me off the top of your head what order these things happened in? You couldn't. It's a little vague to us, but that's the main body of what Yitzchak does in his life. I want to emphasize again, every story other than the section we're about to read that involves Yitzchak is basically passive or barely active. Understood, Mr. Always? And now let's take a look at this section. Okay, the section begins right after the Bechorah gets sold. You know the way when you look in a Torah, there are spaces. In the Chumash, there are Peis and Samochs, but in an actual Torah, there are spaces. When we say Perek, we're not talking about the chapters the way the people, the Christians who divided the chapters divided them. When we say Perek and we're talking about Chumash, we usually mean space to space. Okay? So the Perek we're looking at starts with the space right before Perek Chavav Pasuk Aleph. Okay? Perek Chavav, chapter 26, verse 1. There's a space in the Chumash right there where it says Vayihi Ra'av Ba'aretz. That's right after Esav sells the birthright to Yaakov. That's where we're going to begin. And we're just going to go space to space. Meaning, where's the next space? The next space is after Pasuk Lamed Gimel. So we're going to look at 33 psukim. Before that space, it's about Esav selling the birthright to Yaakov. After that space, it's about Esav and Yaakov and the brachas. Okay? So from those 33 psukim is basically what we have in the Chumash about what Yitzchak did in his lifetime. Understood? That's the bio of Yitzchak. That's Yitzchak's resume. Okay? We're going to take a look at it carefully. We're going to read through all 33 psukim. It's going to be boring, but bear with it. Okay? Mr. Feintuch, you do well to have a chumash in front of you. Go ahead and get one. Here we go. So we begin. Vayihi ra'av ba'aretz milvad hara'av harishon asher haya b'mei Avraham. There was a famine in the land, in addition, or besides the first famine that happened in the days of Avram. Vayelech Yitzchak el Avimelech melech Plishtim Gerar. So what did Yitzchak do? There's a famine in the land of Israel. What does Yitzchak do? He goes to the land of Plishtim. Now, very important for us in this year to understand where Plishtim is. Where's Plishtim? Anyone know? Gaza. What's today the Gaza Strip? And maybe Ashkelon also, that area there. That is Plishtim. Got it? Good. So he goes down to Avimelech, the king of Plishtim, to Gerar. It's a place that's part of the kingdom of Plishtim. Vayirai elav Hashem, and Hashem appeared to him. Vayomer, and he said to him, Al tereid Mitzrayim, do not go down to Egypt. Shchon ba'aretz asher omar lecha, dwell in the land that I shall tell you. So God tells him, by the way, don't go to Egypt. Why does God think he might go to Egypt? What? Because that's what happened with Avram. When there was a famine in the days of Avram went to Egypt. And but the Torah just said he went to Plishtim. But now that you know on the map where that is, you understand that where do the Avos live? What part of Israel do they live in?
Hebron.
They live in around Hebron, Beersheba area. Between Hebron and Beersheba. That whole, the South Hebron Hills, as they're called today. That whole region of the country, that's where they live. If you travel from there towards Gaza, you're heading in the direction of the high road to go to Egypt. Right? Because the roads were along the coast. So God says to him, don't go down to Egypt, live in the land that I will tell you. Next pasuk. Gur ba'aretz hazot, dwell in this land. Okay, now the first thing he said was shchon, live, and now he says Gur ba'aretz hazot, ve'yeh imcha, and I'll be with you, v'avarecha, and I'll bless you, ki lecha v'lezarachat, because to you and your children, atenet kol ha'artzot, I'm going to give all these lands, v'akimoti et hashvuah asher nishbati l'Avram avicha, and I will fulfill the oath that I swore to Avram your father. So so far we've had two mentions of Avram, where he said to him, number one, it says that there's a famine in addition to the famine in the days of Avram, and now he's going down to Egypt. He's going down to Plishtim. It looks like he's heading down to Egypt like his father Avram did. God says, don't do that. Stay in the land I will tell you, and then he gives him this bracha. I'm gonna bless you, and I'm gonna give you the land that I promised to your father. And now he gives him a blessing that we're familiar with. We've heard this one already. And I will make your offspring as multiple, as numerous as the stars of the heaven. And I will give your offspring all of these lands. And through your offspring, all the nations of the land will be blessed. Because Avram listened to my voice. Another mention of Avram. We've had 5 psukim. We've already had 3 mentions of Avram. And he kept he guarded what I wanted him to guard. He kept my commandments, my laws, and my teachings. So far what's happened? Famine. He heads down to Plishtim. God says, don't go to Egypt. Live in the land that I'll tell you. I'm going to bless you. I'm going to give the land to you, to your children. And because Avram listened to my voice and he kept all my commandments. Vayeshev Yitzchak b'Gerar. So Yitzchak dwelled in Gerar. Where's Gerar? It's part of Plishtim. Fine. Vayishalu Hashem makom lishto. So the people asked him about his wife. He said, it's my sister. Why did he do that? That's what his dad did. Very good. Ki arei lemor ishti. He was afraid to say, it's my wife. Penya harguni anshe hamakom. Lest the people of the place will kill me. Al Rivka, because of Rivka. Ki tovat marehe, because she was beautiful. Vayhi ki archu lo shama yamim. A lot of time passed. He was there for a while. Vayashkef Avimelech. So then Avimelech, the king of Plishtim, looks outside his window. And he sees that Yitzchak is mitzachek, which means he's making her laugh. It's a biblical euphemism for he was involved in some sort of romantic interlude. And he notices that Yitzchak is in fact married to Rivka. Okay? So Avimelech calls Yitzchak in and he says, but this is your wife. How did you say it? How did you say it's your sister? Yitzchak said to him, I was afraid that I would get killed. Avimelech says, what are you doing to us? One of the people of the nation almost slept with your wife. You would have brought a sin upon us. And Avimelech commanded his people, saying, anyone who touches this man or his wife should be killed. Next pasuk. Okay, so that's a little brief interlude with the wife. 4 psukim. How long is it? 5 psukim. What? Oh, okay. All right. Now, now things get a little bit choppy. So far we've had a story. He's on his way down to Plishtim, and the thing with the wife's sister thing happens. Now, Vayizra Yitzchak ba'aretz hahi, and Yitzchak planted in that land. Vayimtza b'shana hahi me'asharim, and he found in that year 100 gates. Now, let me explain what 100 gates is. The word sha'ar, which means gate, or listen up. The word sha'ar, which means gate, also means market, and it often means market value. For instance, there's an expression lahafkia et ashar, which means to break the market. If someone raises the prices too high. The word sha'ar means market. Me'ah she'arim means 100 times market value. It means that he multiplied his assets 100-fold. He had a really good year. Okay? Vayimtza b'shana hahi me'ah she'arim vayivarcheu Hashem, and God blessed him. Okay, very nice. Vayigdal ha'ish, and Yitzchak became great. He became wealthy. Vayelech haloch v'gadel, and he went, and he got even wealthier. Ad ki gadal mod, until he was really wealthy. This is a very strange pasuk. Right, the previous pasuk says he made 100-fold. Next pasuk says he got really big. He kept getting bigger until he was really big. Ki gadal mod. Okay. Vahilo miknetzon, and he had cattle. He had flocks. Miknevakar and cattle. Vavudaraban, a lot of laborers. He had a massive estate. Vayikanu oto plishtim, and the plishtim were jealous of him. V'chol habeirot asher chafru avdei aviv b'imei Avraham aviv sitmun plishtim v'imelu mafar. And all of the wells that the servants of Avram had dug in the days of Avram his father have been blocked up by Plishtim and filled in with dirt. The Plishtim blocked up those wells and filled them in with dirt. Okay? Vayomer Avimelech el Yitzchak. Avimelech said to Yitzchak, Lech me'imanu. Get away from us. Go from among us. Avimelech comes to kick Yitzchak out. Ki atzamta mimenu ma'od. Because you are way too powerful for us. You're way more powerful than us. Get away from us. Vayelach misham Yitzchak, and Yitzchak went from there. Vayichan ben Nachal Grar, and he camped in the valley or the river, the wadi. Nachal is a wadi of Grar. Vayeshev sham, and he dwelt there. So he didn't just camp there; he dwelt there. Okay. Vayashov Yitzchak. Now, what does Vayashov mean?
Returned?
He returned. Okay? Yitzchak returned. And he dug up the wells that had been dug in the day of Avram his father. That the Plishtim had filled in after Avram died. And he called them names after the names that his father called them. I have to add here a point. Okay, another mention of Avram. Who's losing concentration? Losing concentration? Good, everyone's in. Here we go. Yitzchak, many of the Mefarshim explain that Yitzchak basically lived his life mimicking his father. God says to him, I'm going to give you the land because of your father, and I'm going to keep the commandment to your father, and then there's a famine, so he does exactly what his father does, he goes down to Plishtim. And then he does exactly what his father does, he says his wife is his sister. And then what does he do? He goes ahead and he digs up the same wells that his father had. And what does he do? He calls them the same names that his father called them. Okay? So he seems to be just like doing whatever his dad did. And Yitzchak's servants dug in the wadi, and they found a well of live waters. So the shepherds of Grar started fighting with the shepherds of Yitzchak, claiming this is our water. Vayikra Shem HaBe'er Esek, and they called the name of the well Esek, which means a tumult or a fight. Ki taskuid imo, because they fought over it. Vayachbru Be'er Acheret, they dug another well. Follow along, Mr. Schaefer, Mr. Billet. They dug another well. Vayarivu Gamla, and they fought over that one also. Vayikra Shem HaSitna, they called it Sitna, which means animosity. Vayatek Misham, and he got up from there. Vayachbru Be'er Acheret, and he dug another well. V'lo ravu ala, and they didn't fight over it. Vayikra Shema Rechovot, and he called it Rechovot. Vayomer, and he said, Ki ata hirchiv Hashem lanu ufarinu b'aretz. Now God has expanded for us, and we have multiplied, and we have been fruitful in the land. Vayal misham Beersheba, and then he went to Beersheba. What is going on?
He's reliving his father's life.
He's reliving his father's life. He's digging wells. He's naming them things.
And then he goes to.
And now he's going to Beersheba. Okay. Vayira elav Hashem balaylahu, and God appears to him at night. And what does He say to him? Vayomer Anochi, I am who? Elohei Avraham Avicha. I am the God of your father Avram. Okay. Al tira, don't be afraid. Ki itcha anochi, because I'm with you. Ubeirachticha, and I will bless you. V'hir beiti et zaracha bavur Avram avdi, and I will increase your offspring because of your father Avram, who's my servant. Vayiven sham mizbech, and Yitzchak built a mizbech. Vayikra b'shem Hashem, and he called the name of God. Vayet sham alo, and he pitched his tent there. Vayichru sham avdei Yitzchak be'er, and Yitzchak's servants, what they do? They do what they always do. They dug another well. It's their hobby. It's all they know.
They're archaeologists.
They dug another well. Avimelech halach. So now what happens? Remember Avimelech kicked him out? Yeah. And there was a whole fighting? And now he's in Beersheba. Avimelech comes over to him now. Avimelech halach elav. Avimelech comes to him. Migrar, from Grar. V'achuzat Meriehu, and some of his friends. Ufichol satzvo, and Fichol, his general. Vayomer Alehem Yitzchak, and Yitzchak says, Madu abatem elai. Yes, what I asked. Well, what are you doing here? Why'd you come to me? Atem sneitem, you hate me. But shachunim etchem, you kicked me out. Vayomru, so they said to him, Ra'o ra'inu ki haya Hashem imach. We saw that Hashem was with you. Vanomer, and we said, Tehina ala benotenu. There should be a treaty or a covenant between us, an oath between us, beinenu veinach, between us and you, v'nichrata brit imach, and we should make a covenant with you. A treaty with you. Im tasei manu ra'ah, if you do anything bad to us, kasher lo naganucha, just as we won't touch you, v'kasher asinu imcha rak tov, and as we've only done good to you, v'nashalecha b'shalom, and we sent you away peacefully, ata baruch Hashem, you are now blessed of God. Vayas lahem mishteh, so he made a party for them. Vayachlu vayishtu, and they ate and drank. Very cryptic. He made a party and they all drank and ate or whatever. Vayashkim b'boker, they got up in the morning. Vayishavu ishlachiv, and they swore to each other. Vayishalchem Yitzchak, and Yitzchak sent them away. Vayilchumei tov v'shalom, and they went away peacefully. Vayhi bayomahu, and on that day, vayavo avdei Yitzchak, and Yitzchak's servants came, and they got big news for him. Vayagidu lo, and they told him, alodot aber shechem, they told him about a well that they dug. Vayomer, they said to him, matzanu mayim, we found water. Yes. Shocking. Vayikra ota shiv'ah, and he called the well Shiv'ah. Al kain shem ha'ir Beersheba ad hayom hazeh, and that's why the city is called Beersheba until this day.
No, but it was called Beersheba.
It was called Beersheba before. Very good. Good. We'll get to that. Okay, what happened?
They dug a well.
They dug a well, and then they dug a well, and then they traveled and they dug a well. And then something happened, and they went ahead and told Yitzchak, guess what we did today? We dug a well. Okay?
It's all very cunning.
And Yitzchak got big, and he got bigger, and he got even bigger, and he was so big, he was big. So they sent him away because he was big. Because he was okay, look, all joking aside, what is going on here? So, one day a few years ago, my father and I were learning, and we sort of like, it was like a conversation, we were like reading through the psukim. We just decided, like, we have to make some sense of this. Like, what exactly happens here? So we tried to, like, sort of read carefully and follow along exactly the pattern of Yitzchak's life. Now, one of the important facts we know about Yitzchak's life is that Yitzchak never leaves Eretz Yisrael. And we know that there are legitimate reasons to leave Eretz Yisrael. Avram left. Yaakov after him left. Right? Yitzchak is leaving for the same reason. And God says no. Yitzchak spends his whole life in Israel. Look at this section. Let's go back to the beginning of the section. We're going to follow along a little bit differently. I would like to submit to you that Yitzchak Avinu, he's not passive at all, and he's not just mimicking his father. Avram Avinu was given a promise from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And the promise from HaKadosh Baruch Hu was that Avram's offspring would inherit Eretz Yisrael. Avram now has a son. He also has another son, Yishmael. We'll get to him later. That's the cherry on top dealing with Yishmael. Avram has another son. But he has this son, Yitzchak, who's supposed to inherit everything he owns. God says to this son, Yitzchak, Yitzchak, you are not leaving Israel. You can't leave Israel. Why? A statement has to be made. Your life is going to be about one thing. Your life, what you do in life. And it's going to be about staking the claim to Eretz Yisrael. That's what your life is about. I gave the land to your father. I said he's going to go to his offspring. Which offspring did I mean? I meant you. You are going to stay in Eretz Yisrael. Watch what happens now. Now we're going to reread this whole section with that in mind. There's a famine in the land besides the first famine in the days of Avram. Yitzchak goes down to the Avimelech, the king of Plishtim, to Gerar. God appears to him and says, don't leave. That's what I just told you about. Live in the land. I'll be with you. I'm going to bless you. And I'm going to give you all of these lands. And I'm going to fulfill what I swore to Avram, your father. I'm going to make your children many, like the stars of heaven. And I'm going to give your land I'm going to give your offspring all of these lands. And your offspring will be blessed. And through your offspring will be blessed all the nations of the land. Why is this important? See, we know that Yitzchak's the chosen one. And Yitzchak knew that because of the Akedah. But at some point, God has to come and tell Yitzchak, you're the one. So when God says to Yitzchak, look, Avram had 2 kids. He had Yishmael also. You're the one who's getting his brachas. So who gets Avram's brachas is critical. That's why he keeps mentioning Avram. Because Avram listened to what I told him and he kept all my mitzvah. Now, here's where the party starts. Pasuk Vav. Yitzchak lived in Gerar. That's in Plishtim. The wife's sister thing happened. It says he dwelt there. It doesn't say Vayagor, which means live there as a stranger. It says Vayeshev. Vayeshev means to dwell permanently. He set up shop there. But notice, I want to point something out to you. We already knew he was in Gerar when that pasuk appeared. Go back a few psukim. Pasuk Aleph says that Yitzchak went to Gerar. Okay? And then God says, live in the land I will tell you. And now it says that he lived in Gerar. That pasuk's not telling us that he happened to be in Gerar, because we know he was in Gerar. He was already in Gerar from pasuk Aleph. That pasuk's telling us now that God. Now, what's in between those 2 psukim? God's promise that He's going to give him the land. What does that mean about Gerar? Gerar is part of Eretz Yisrael. Because think about it. It says that he went to Plishtim Gerara. So you're reading, you don't know anything, you think, okay, that's a different country. God says, no. I want you to live in the land that I told you, and I'm going to give you this land, it's going to be yours, it's going to be yours. This is all part of Eretz Yisrael that I promised to Avram. And Yitzchak, now he really sets up permanent shop in Gerar. In Gerar. The people, this whole thing with the wife-sister thing. And Yitzchak is, says, look, I was worried I would get killed. Let's skip ahead beyond that. Avimelech complains to Yitzchak. Yitzchak has no response. Doesn't say anything to him. Avimelech commands everyone not to touch Yitzchak. And then it says that Yitzchak became very successful financially. Now what's interesting about that, why did Yitzchak go here? Why did he go to Plishtim? There was a famine. He was escaping a famine. So you would think if someone was just going somewhere to escape a famine, what would he do once times got better?
Go back.
He'd go back. Does he go back? No. Torah tells us that he became very wealthy. There. It Davka says there. Vayizrai Yitzchak. Look at Pasuk Yud Bet now. Now read it carefully. We're going to start noticing words we didn't notice before. Look at Pasuk Yud Bet. Vayizrai Yitzchak ba'aretz hahi. It doesn't say Yitzchak planted and became wealthy. says Yitzchak planted where? Ba'aretz hahi. Otherwise that's useless information. Just tell me. Vayizra Yitzchak vayimtza b'shanayim me'asharim. Leave out the words ba'aretz hahi. Of course, who cares where he planted? If the point of the pasuk is just to tell me that he got rich, big deal. No. How do you lay claim to a piece of land?
Plant there.
You plant there. Vayizra Yitzchak ba'aretz hahi. Yitzchak not only was living there to get through the famine, but he planted there. He developed wealth there. Okay, he's setting up shop, and he really built up a serious business, a serious power base. Vayigdal ha'ish. He became powerful. He got even more powerful. He became a very powerful force there. And he had a lot of cattle. He was planting things. He had cattle. He had lots of slaves. The Plishtim got jealous of him. Now, one thing that happens anytime a conquering nation conquers a piece of land and wants to lay claim to it, one of the things they do is they try to remove all evidence of the previous nation having been there. You guys aware of this?
Destroy the cemetery.
So one of the things they do is they destroy the cemeteries, they destroy monuments, they rename things. Very common that cities get renamed, places get renamed by conquering armies. You're aware of this? Jerusalem got renamed many times by the various conquering armies that came through here. When the Soviets set up the Soviet Union, they renamed all the major cities of Russia. Right? So St. Petersburg became Leningrad. Right? People rename things. And they also want to erase any evidence of the previous nation having been there. When Israel gave the Sinai to Egypt, we had built whole cities there and infrastructure. Do you know what they wanted us to do? They wanted us to rip everything up. They didn't want any of the buildings to be there. No evidence that we were there. And then they renamed all the cities back to the Egyptian names. Okay, so what happens here? All of the wells, Pasuk Tet Vav, all of the wells that Avram's servants had dug had been blocked up. Now, why would anyone block up a well? A well is a useful resource. But you're destroying, especially in this region of the world where water is a hot commodity. Think of what they did. They blocked up wells. What's the possible motivation to block up wells? What's the possible motivation? You're getting rid of a resource? What are you, an idiot? They're blocking up the wells because they want to erase evidence of the previous owners. It's the only motivation to block up wells. So they block up the wells that Avram had dug and filled them with dirt. Okay? That's step number one. They want to erase evidence of Avram's having ownership over this area. Avram had dug wells in this area. Another way you lay claim to a piece of property, you can farm it, you develop it. You develop a piece of property, you lay claim to it. So they davka filled up his wells, and then, look at the juxtaposition of the psukim. I want to show you the flow of the psukim. If you start back at Pasuk Yud Bet, we have Yitzchak planting in that land, and becoming extremely wealthy and powerful. That's Pasuk Yud Bet, Yud Gimel, Yud Dalet. End of Pasuk Yud Dalet, the Plishtim are jealous of him. Pasuk Tet Vav, they block up the wells. Now they're starting the attack. They're starting to try to erase his claim to the land, because he's very powerful. They block up all the wells that Avram had dug, they fill them up with dirt. Avimelech then turns to Yitzchak and says, get out of here. Lech me'imanu. Why? Because you're too powerful. We don't want you here anymore. Okay? This is right after they blocked up the wells. So where does Yitzchak go? Does he go to Beersheba? Remember, he originally came from the South Hebron Hills, or Beersheba. He came here because there was a famine. And then why did he stay? If you'd ask Yitzchak the day he traveled, he'd say, I'm just going there because of a famine. Why does he stay for years? Because God says, live in the land that I will show you. And where does he live? Right there. Planting, building up wealth, building up power. They now fill up the wells that have belonged to him and tell him to get lost. So where does he go? Does he go home? Vayelach misham Yitzchak. Vayichan, where does he live? Benachal Grar. Yeah, he doesn't go very far at all. He doesn't go back to Hebron or Beersheba. He camps out in Nachal Grar, right there next to Grar. He goes right next door. He doesn't travel far at all. And then it doesn't just say Vayichan Benachal Grar, end of pasuk. What does it say after that? Vayeshev Sham. He set up permanent shop there. Okay? And then what's the very next pasuk? What are the next two words? Vayashav Yitzchak. What does Vayashav mean? He went back. How long's he been gone for? He went right back. And what does he do? And he digs up all the wells that have been dug in Avram's time, that the Plishtim filled up. Is this a passive person?
This guy's determined.
Yitzchak's life is misunderstood, my friends. Yitzchak goes right back. He doesn't go very far at all. He regroups, sets up shop right nearby, and then goes back to reclaim the property that was taken. He goes back to reclaim the property taken from him and from Avram.
Why did he do that before?
I don't know.
Dramatic effect.
And what does he do? He calls them the same names that his father called them. This isn't some passive act of mimicking his father. This is reclaiming. This is renaming the places their original names. That's what we do. We come to Eretz Yisrael. What do? We take places and we give them back their original names. Shechem became Nablus, and now it's Shechem again. You know what I mean? Like that. Gotta go back and rename the place. So they reclaim these areas. They rename them the names that Avram had named them. And then what do? After he finishes digging up all the original wells, he's not done. They dig more. Now, if you're think about it from the Plishtim's perspective, you see Yitzchak coming back, and he's reclaiming property that was originally his. And you know it was originally his, and you were trying to drive him out. So that's one thing. He's reclaiming original property. You with me, Oren? What's the next step? Yitzchak says, I'm not just going to reclaim property that belonged to my father. This whole land is mine. This isn't about getting the property that I previously owned back. I want to show you, Plishtim, that I own all of this land. So what does he do? They dug more wells. In addition to the original well. And they found another well. This is a public works project. We look and say, wells, wells, wells. Wells is a public works project. He develops more of the land. So then they start fighting with him. It's one thing to go back and redig the wells that were originally yours. Okay, we kind of know we took them from you. Now he's digging new wells? Wait a second. Ro'ei Grar come to him and they say, that's our water. Now you're in our territory. So they fought with him and said, Lanu Hamayim. So what they do, they called the name of the well Asek, because to point out that there was a fight over it, which is very important. Because if you want to make sure that people don't lay full ownership to something, you make it known that there's a dispute. So they dug another well. He dug another one. They fought on about that one also. They called it animosity. And then he got it from there, and he dug another well. And this time, there was no fight. Yitzchak won. They stopped fighting with him. So he called it Rechovot. Why? Because now God has really let us expand and be fruitful in the land. He won. So now his work is done. What's the very next pasuk? Went to Beersheba. He wasn't here to live here. He was here to lay claim. They tried to throw him out. Fine. He took a step back, regrouped, came up with a plan, went right back in, reclaimed everything and more. And they fought and they fought and they fought, and eventually they gave up and he won. He had laid claim to the land, and now it's clear who's the owner. Now he can go back to Beersheba. And he goes back to Beersheba, and what happens? God comes to him and he says, I'm the God of Avram, don't be afraid, I'll bless you. What's God saying to him? He's saying, good job. Don't be afraid, I know that you're now getting into conflict, you're doing the right thing. He builds a Mizbeach, he pitches his tent there, and they dig another well. Avimelech then comes from Gerar. Now look at this is very interesting. Avram Avinu in Parshat Vayera also had a covenant that he made with Avimelech and Fichol, who came to see him right before the Akedah. And there it says that Avram made a covenant with him. And there's a comment by the Rashbam on the words Vayhi Acharei Dvarim Eila right at the beginning of the Akedah that says that God was upset at Avram for making the covenant. God said to him, you're making a covenant? You're ceding land to him? I gave you this land, and now you're giving up portions of it? To Avimelech? Go kill your son and let's see what value that has. That's a famous comment by the Rashbam. Look what happens here. They come to him now, And what's his approach to them? He's not Avram Avinu. He's not his father who's trying to be Makar of everyone. He says, get away from here. You hate me. What are you doing here? Right, that's what he says to them. What are you doing here? You hate me. You sent me away. So they said, we see that God is with you. We want to make a covenant with you. Now, does Yitzchak make a covenant with them?
Yeah.
Does he? Where? Throws him a party. It says they swore. It doesn't say they made a covenant. He doesn't make a covenant with them. Gives them a little, he's straight with them. He says, I know you don't like me, but doesn't make any covenant with them and sends them away. Now, Beersheba was originally, here's an interesting place name. Why was Beersheba originally called Beersheba? Who originally named it Beersheba? Avram did. Why did he call it Beersheba? Because of the covenant that he made with Avimelech. So Yitzchak, in an interesting twist, keeps the same name, but declares that it's called Beersheba for a completely different reason. What's his reason for calling it Beersheba? Because he's dug the seventh well now. He's laid even further claim to its ownership. Meaning, he's kept the same name, but he's completely altered its meaning. Now the meaning of the name isn't that I have a covenant with Avimelech. No. The meaning of the name Beersheba is that I own it. And it's also making reference to all the other wells I own. And then what happens afterwards? His servants come in and they say, we're still digging wells. We found more water. Why are they digging so many wells? They're laying claim to property. They're doing public works projects. They're developing the land. And that's the end of the section. Now, a totally different reading the second time around. Yitzchak Avinu is not a passive person. Yitzchak Avinu, we talk about him as Gvura, right? Avram is Chesed, Yitzchak is Gvura. Gvura doesn't just mean, like Ezu HaGibor HaKovesh Et Yitzro. Controlling your Yetzer Hara. Gvura also means might. Yitzchak is a powerful person who has a mission in life that God grants him. When he's on his way down to Plishtim, God says, your job is not to leave Israel. You are the offspring of Avraham Avinu, who I promised this land to. We have to make a statement right here, right now. Your job is to lay claim to the land of Israel, all of it. Most importantly, the piece of property that Avram Avinu ceded to the Plishtim in a covenant, Avram made a treaty that God was upset about, giving rights of ownership to a piece of Eretz Yisrael to the Plishtim. I want you to go back. I want you to get it. You're going to lay claim to it. And he does. And that's what he devotes his life's work to, laying claim to the land of Israel. Now, there's another piece to this which isn't in this section, but it's really cool. I want you to flip back in your Chumash to Parshat Vayera. Before the Akedah, when Yishmael is kicked out of the house. I'm sorry. No, I'm sorry. Wrong place. Sorry. Sorry. Parshat Chayesara. Sorry. Parshat Chayesara. Oh, actually, no. I'm messing you guys around. I'll read this first pasuk to you. It's in Lech Lecha. I know. Sorry. Here we go. When Hagar gets the first time Hagar runs away from home, when she's pregnant with Yishmael. Remember, she runs away from home, and a malach talks to her. She runs into the desert, and a malach says, "Go back." Vatikra Shem Hashem Hadover Ela Ata El Roi. So she called the name of God that spoke to her. This is after the malach talks to her and tells her to go back, and also gives her a bracha. Remember, the malach says to her, the malach says, you're going to have a child, you're going to call him Yishmael, he's going to be great, right? Remember that? And he sends her back home. The malach tells her to go back home to Avram. So she then names the place where the malach appears to her. She names the place. This is, if you want to look at it, it's Perek Tet Zayin, Pasuk Yud Gimel Yud Daled. It says she called the name of God who spoke to her, Ata El Roi, you are the God who sees me. Ki Amra, because she said, Hagam Halom Ra'iti Achrei Roi. Al-Kain, Pasuk Yud Daled. Kara La Be'er, she called that well, Be'er lachai ro'i, the well of the one who lives and sees me. Hinei ben Kadesh u'bein Bared, it is located between Kadesh and Bared, in the Negev, in the desert there. So she names the place Be'er lachai ro'i. Go to Parshat Chayesara. Parshat Chayesara, after Eliezer manages to coax Rivka away from Lavan and Bethuel, and they're traveling back, and it says that, take a look at Pasuk Samach Bet. In Chayesara, Perek Chaf Dalid, Pasuk Samach Bet. One of the longest prakim in Chumash. Everyone see that pasuk? This is where Rivka and her attendants and Eliezer and the camels, they're all traveling towards Yitzchak and Avram's house. And what does it say that Yitzchak's up to? So we all know the second pasuk, that he was out davening or talking in the field. What's the previous pasuk? Yitzchak ba, and Yitzchak is coming. Mibo, he was coming back from going to Be'er Lachai Ro'i. Hu Yoshev Be'eretz HaNegev. And he was living in the land of the Negev. What was he doing at Be'er Lachai Ro'i? What was he doing there? So says Rashi that he was at Be'er Lachai Ro'i, Shehalach Lavi Hagar Lavram. He went to go get Hagar. Hagar had gone to live there. When Hagar got kicked out of the house the second time, where did she go? She went back to that place where she had a vision of an angel. There was a well there in the desert. She went back to live there. Yitzchak went there. Now let's jump ahead to the end of Parshat Toldot, our Parsha. Okay? I'm sorry. End of Chayesara where Avram dies. I apologize. I'm so mixed up. End of Chayesara where Avram dies. Okay? Avram's death. You ready? Pasuk. We'll start at Pasuk Chet. Vayigva, Vayamot. Avram died. Pasuk Chet of Perek Chaf Hey, chapter 25, verse 8. Vayigva Vayamot Avram b'Seva Tova. Avram died of a nice old age. Zaken b'Saveh, elderly and satisfied. Vayasav alamav, and he passed on. Vayikberu oto Yitzchak v'Yishmael banav. And Yitzchak and Yishmael, his sons, buried him El Marat HaMachpelah, El Sadeh Ephron, Ben Sochar, Chakizio Sher Panim Amrei. Buried him in Marat HaMachpelah, the field of Ephron, etc. Hasadeh Asher Kana Avraham Eit Bnei Chet, the field that Avram bought from the children of Chet. Shama Kubar Avram v'Sarah Ishto, that's where Avram and Sarah, his wife, are buried. I'll look at Pasuk Yud Aleph. Vayhi Acharei Mot Avraham, and behold, and it was after Avram died. Vayevarach Elokim et Yitzchak beno, and God blessed Yitzchak his son. Vayeshev Yitzchak im Be'er Lachai Ro'i. Yitzchak goes to live by Be'er Lachai Ro'i. Why?
Staking his claim.
Why does he have to stake his claim Davka to Be'er Lachai Ro'i?
Because he was just with Ishmael.
It's not just that. It's where Yishmael lives. You see, Yishmael, think about it, you're Yishmael. And Yishmael, we see here, accepted his secondary status. It says Yitzchak v'Yishmael, and Rashi says here that Yishmael accepted his secondary status. But you know what Yishmael might say? He says, look, Yitzchak, I understand that he gave you everything, but like, Be'er Lachai Ro'i has special significance to my people. That's where Hagar, our matriarch, had her great vision. And that's where she lived. And that's where Yishmael lived. Although the rest of Israel might be yours, this is holy to our faith. This is our area. Yitzchak goes down there, and where does he live? He hangs out there. In the previous parsha it says he went down there to get Hagar away from there. And then he goes, right after Avram dies, what does he do? When all the inheritance, think about it, what's happening after Avram dies? Yitzchak inherits everything. And where does Yishmael go? Back to the one piece of property that he's sort of going to claim as his own. So what does Yitzchak do? Goes and lives there. Yitzchak's whole life is devoted to staking the claim to Eretz Yisrael and fending off those people who have legitimate reason to believe that they own parts of it. Avimelech, he says, hey, I have a covenant. I was here longer than you. And I had a covenant with Avram, ceding ownership of this piece of property. No, it's ours. Yishmael, okay, fine, he gave you everything, but this is where I live, and this is where my mother lives, and this is holy to us. No, it's ours. The entire Eretz Yisrael is ours. That's Yitzchak's life. And that's also why it's so significant that he never leaves Israel. You know why it's significant that he never leaves Israel? Davka being the son of Avram? Because people who leave a country when it's in trouble are generally not the people who can lay claim that this is our homeland. A homeland you don't leave when it's trouble. I once heard a great line from Rabbi Riskin, from Efrat. You guys know Rabbi Riskin? Rabbi Riskin has a great line. Rabbi Riskin and my dad were classmates from childhood all the way through smicha. They're very good friends. Anyway, Rabbi Riskin, I'm saying that so that you know that Rabbi Riskin's a lot older than he looks, because he looks very young, 70. Rabbi Riskin once said, beautiful, he said, I heard him speaking in Putzlaritz, and he said, the question that he was talking to American Jews, he said, the question you have to ask yourself is Eretz Yisrael Disneyland or Motherland? He said, what do I mean? He said, if it's dangerous in Disneyland, you don't go to Disneyland. But if your mother's in trouble, that's when you go visit. Right? He said, is it Disneyland or Motherland? This is a great line. But that's the point. When Eretz Yisrael, what, there's a famine? Yitzchak. Hashem says to Yitzchak, I have an agenda for you. You're generation 1. And there's other people alive now who have all sorts of claims to this land. You have a very specific job to do. This is what your life is about. Your life is about Eretz Yisrael. Your life is about staking claim to this land. Anyway, so now all the peculiarities in the pasuk, like he's digging wells, dig more wells, and now he goes back to Beersheba. So now I think it makes sense. You read through the psukim. Hopefully, for the rest of your lives, when you read these psukim, it's much clearer, and we understand that Yitzchak is what he's all about. Yitzchak Avinu is all about, and we shouldn't view him as some sort of passive, manipulated character, as he's often painted as. It's a lot more than that. So that's it.